The China Import and Export Commodities Fair, better known as the Canton Fair, is the world's largest trade event, long hailed as a barometer of China's foreign trade strength. This year, despite mounting global headwinds, Beijing is determined to project an image of resilience and vitality. The Canton Fair remains a showcase of China's manufacturing muscle. One vlogger captured the official narrative perfectly.
It's overwhelming in the best way possible. You've got innovation, hustle, and a level of efficiency that honestly puts a lot of other trade shows to shame. Thousands of booths, millions of products, and a global marketplace that's not just about business, it's about sheer scale.
我现在正在广交会的机器人展馆现场啊，眼前这一幕真的是让我太热血沸腾了。这一届的广交会简直是疯了，31000家的参展商啊，老外比去年往年都是多1倍的。刚才呢，我还看到一群外国的客户啊，围着我们的一个智能的服务机器人，那个眼神啊，简直像发现了新大陆一样。最解气的是一个来自于德国的采购商，对着咱们的机器人就是连连竖起大拇指啊，直接说美国那套我们不玩了，中国的科技真的是太牛了，这才是未来啊！你们是没有来到现场，你不知道现场有多么的火爆，来自新加坡的、迪拜的、印度的欧洲的都在抢着跟咱们签单呢。美国搞什么贸易战啊、关税墙啊，根本挡不住全世界跟中国来做生意的热情。
This is the China the CCP wants the world to see. Buzzing crowds, endless opportunities, and unstoppable industrial power. But behind the grand displays and polished press releases, the reality tells a different story.
广交会的效果基本上一个人没有，全是上游供应商来推销的。
刚从广交会下来，今天我认识一个美国客户都没遇到。不是吧，哥，我们做高端料理锅的，没有美国人，没有这些欧美客户，我们高端产品往哪里卖呀？我真的当时站了一整天，我觉得我们这一次真的 over 了。
这个鞋子行业的真的是冷清啊！大家看，大家都坐在摊位上面坐一排，一排望去，看到没有？坐在这里，给我感觉想起来了那种村里面啊，坐在一排唠嗑的那种场景啊。然后没有老外，都在这里刷手机。
跟着我的镜头，大家看一下这一届的广交会，人少的可怜，怎么办呢？你说？
上期的广交会真的人少得好可怜。比如说，我现在在这一家门口在休息哈，已经20分钟了，我没看到有一包的采购商进去洽谈业务。我等一下再待个10分钟，看看有没有客人过来。
这广交会现在明显的感觉欧美的来的少，什么非洲、南美、沙特阿拉伯的这些可能多一点。
今天的广交会，我听到最多的问候语就是阿萨拉姆阿里库。
The first phase of this year's Canton Fair, which concluded on April 19th, revealed an uncomfortable truth. Foot traffic was significantly down, and many exhibitors facing disappointing business prospects quietly packed up early. Organizers, scrambling to maintain appearances, issued a rare public notice demanding no early dismantling of booths, an unusual move that only underscored the frustration simmering beneath the glossy facade. Official figures seemed to reinforce the sense of optimism. By April 8th, nearly 170,000 overseas buyers had pre-registered for the fair. Organizers highlighted that 72% of these came from Belt and Road countries, 27.4% from BRICS nations, 14.3% from Middle Eastern countries, and just 10.5% from Europe and the United States. By April 14th, the number of pre-registered foreign buyers had climbed past 200,000. On paper, these numbers suggested robust international interest, but on the ground, the reality was far less encouraging. Pre-registration, as many exhibitors pointed out, did not guarantee actual attendance. Reports from exhibitors and on-site translators consistently told a different story. The foot traffic is noticeably lower than at the autumn fair, one said. There are almost no buyers from Europe or the US, but there are many from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, said another. Others noted that by the third day the crowds had thinned significantly and warned that there needs to be trade first before you can make partners. A lighting industry exhibitor recently posted a summary of their experience, describing their booth placement at Sea Hall near the dual passage entrance. Although foot traffic in the area seemed decent, not many visitors actually stepped inside. The exhibitor noted a strong presence from Southeast Asian nations and Belt and Road Initiative countries, along with several South American clients who stopped by for brief conversations. He also shared that there were no official sign-in sheets at the venue, making it hard to verify actual attendance numbers. Many exhibitors were simply waiting, hoping potential buyers might later visit their factories, treating the fair less as a transactional marketplace and more as a branding opportunity. Sensing trouble, the organizers moved swiftly to maintain appearances. On April 15th, the very first day of the fair, the China Import and Export Commodities Fair Business Office sent a notice to all trade delegations. The message was blunt. The foreign trade environment was severe and complex, and exhibitors were ordered to fully utilize the 5-day exhibition period without dismantling their booths early. Special inspections were announced, and violators were threatened with public naming and the loss of their annual commendations. However, the policy soon softened as the situation deteriorated. On April 18th, exhibitors received another notice again emphasizing that early dismantling was forbidden, with official booth breakdowns permitted only after 6 p.m. on the 5th day of each phase. Yet, by April 19th, a quiet adjustment was made. Exhibitors were informed that if no customers were present, they could begin packing up after 12 p.m., hours ahead of the official schedule. It was a small but telling concession, revealing the growing gap between the bustling image China's government wanted the world to see and the quieter, more uncertain reality playing out in the halls of the Canton Fair. This wasn't the case before. Karen Huang, a foreign trade vendor, said that the impact of the tariff war has been profound, likely contributing to the noticeable absence of American buyers at the fair. The organizers, fully aware of the shift, had issued instructions to exhibitors not to dismantle their booths early, an implicit acknowledgement of how serious the situation had become. Karen had seen a very different Canton Fair during her years in the industry. Her previous company specialized in electronics, and she personally attended the fair twice a year while living in China. In 5 days, we sold samples, not even talking about orders, she recalled. When customers came, they could buy a sample for 200, 300, or 150 renminbi. I could make over 300,000 renminbi just in sample sales. We were busy from morning until night, sometimes needing someone to relieve me so I could grab a quick break. It was exhausting. Every year during the 5 days of the Canton Fair or the Hong Kong Electronics Fair, I would lose weight. Karen had been attending the Canton Fair since 2004 and continued consistently until 2010, taking part in both the spring and autumn sessions alongside the Hong Kong Electronics Fairs. Clients at that time came from all over the world, and European and American buyers alone made up 30% to 40% of her business. Their company primarily targeted the Asian market, but every product had a specific regional focus. No matter what, every fair was extremely busy, she said. Some companies actually lose money on domestic sales, but their export profits were enough to support the whole business. Even if they lost money locally, they still made significant profits overall. But the dynamics have changed dramatically. After leaving China in 2010 due to persecution by the CCP, Karen stayed in touch with former colleagues who kept her updated on the situation. She learned that starting from 2020, with the outbreak of the pandemic, China's economy had taken a heavy hit. Foreign companies, once eager to attend trade fairs, began to pull back, both to cut costs and because there were simply fewer serious buyers showing up. The number of European and American clients plummeted, leaving behind mainly buyers from Africa and parts of Asia. The pandemic forced the 2020 Canton Fair to move online for the first time, with organizers waiving booth fees altogether to keep participation numbers up. In the years since, facing mounting challenges in foreign trade, the fair has repeatedly lowered exhibition costs and even waived fees entirely for companies from poorer regions. Karen disclosed that this year her colleagues' company chose not to participate at all. In the past, getting a booth at the Canton Fair wasn't easy. Companies had to apply early, maintain good relationships with organizers, and often engage in under-the-table practices. Offering gold cards loaded with large sums of money, or giving expensive gifts like luxury bags, cash, or favors to secure a prime location. For foreign trade companies, attending these fairs was crucial. It wasn't just about visibility, it was about survival. Landing a single major client through a trade fair could mean millions, or even tens of millions, of dollars in orders, enough to determine whether a company thrived or folded. If you didn't already have a booth, buying a second-hand one was extremely expensive, Karen explained. For a small standard 9x9 booth, the price typically started around 200,000 yuan. If you wanted a better booth, it could easily cost 300,000 yuan or more. At my previous company, a large enterprise, we once rented 4 adjoining booths and carried out special renovations, which alone cost around 200,000 yuan just for the decoration. Today, those days of aggressive investment are fading fast. Karen said, "Now the trade industry is in decline. Every penny counts. If you can save money, you do. If you don't need to travel abroad, you don't." My colleague used to spend half a year in the US traveling around the world, meeting clients. Not anymore. There's no point in flying around when people are either in a waiting phase or already thinking about switching channels and markets altogether. Another netizen said, "This year's Canton Fair saw booth prices reach historic highs. A standard 9 square meter booth was being resold for 180,000 to 200,000 yuan. Business was already difficult this year, and with booth fees so high, we decided not to exhibit." The pressure on China's foreign trade sector continues to mount. In early April 2025, the US-China trade war escalated sharply. The total US tariff on Chinese goods surged to 145%, while China retaliated with 125% tariffs on American imports. At the same time, the US closed a major loophole, imposing tariffs on small, previously tax-exempt parcels coming from mainland China and Hong Kong. The effects were immediate. Many US orders were canceled almost overnight. An exhibitor for a lighting factory from Zhongshan, Guangdong Province, speaking anonymously out of safety concerns, said bluntly, "There are no clients from Germany, France, and the United States." Instead, he said, most visitors were from Ukraine and Russia. He described the morning of the opening day as sparse, and noted that while past fairs brought high-quality buyers, his company now isn't expecting to sign nearly as many orders. Although his factory hasn't yet felt the immediate impact of the tariffs, he admitted they probably would soon, because a large share of their products end up being resold to the US through third countries. Phase 2 of the fair, running from April 23rd to April 27th, is focusing on furniture, ceramics, and household goods. But pessimism continues to spread. A furniture businessman from Fujian province said the economic downturn has already hit them hard. "The furniture fair in Shenzhen last month was already very bleak," he said. Their business model heavily relies on exports to Europe and the US, and now their foreign orders have collapsed. Heading into the next phase of the Canton Fair, he said he was mentally preparing to sit idle for 5 days. Karen noted that in previous years, this time would have marked the peak of the Canton Fair season. Now, the tariff war has cast a long shadow over businesses. Many industries rely heavily on the US market, sometimes for as much as 70% of their total sales. With that market abruptly cut off, mass layoffs have already begun. Karen said, "So everyone feels at risk, and they're feeling demoralized. How can we continue with exports like this? For companies dependent on the European and American markets, transitioning is extremely difficult. There's no real alternative. You can't just stop exporting to the US and expect other countries to pick up the slack. The European market is too small, and it can't absorb the volume the US does." She pointed out that while Asia, Africa, and Latin America offer opportunities, they simply cannot match the scale. The US consumes products in large quantities. Americans use and dispose. They don't store goods for later. That's why US demand is so significant, Karen explained. According to data from the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, total imports from China reached $438.9 billion in 2024, with electronics, machinery, and textiles leading the way. Karen also revealed that the current wave of layoffs is only the beginning. Some companies initially laid off 30% of their workforce. Now it's 50% or more. Still, some businesses are trying to hang on, hoping for a last-minute political compromise. The hope of those holding out is just delaying the inevitable, Karen said. Many companies won't survive this. A 30% tariff increase was already painful. At 50%, it was becoming unbearable. But now, with tariffs at 145%, many Chinese exporters are facing collapse, and the unemployment rate will soar. She added that many people inside China may not realize how long this crisis could last. Expecting Trump to back down is impossible. Xi Jinping, as a symbol of dictatorship, will not yield either. The CCP has its conditions, such as demanding Taiwan as a bargaining chip, but Trump will not accept such terms. This entire administration is filled with hardliners and hawks, she said. Inside China, the government is scrambling to find a way out. In recent weeks, the Ministry of Commerce organized emergency meetings with major trade associations, supermarkets, and distribution companies, urging them to open up green channels and boost subsidies to help foreign trade firms shift their goods to the domestic market. JD.com, one of China's biggest e-commerce platforms, pledged to purchase no less than 200 billion yuan worth of export-to-domestic products over the next year. But Karen remains deeply skeptical. The domestic market is already saturated, she said. Adding export inventories into it will only worsen the unemployment crisis. The situation for China is dire. Meanwhile, the U.S. will be far less affected because American companies can simply source from suppliers in other countries. Since the pandemic, she explained, American buyers have quietly diversified their supply chains, sourcing increasingly from Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia. It's a slow shift, but one that is accelerating. Although U.S. tariffs on goods from other countries are still lower, analysts warn that global demand is likely to shrink further as U.S. policies force trading partners to take sides, either with Washington or with Beijing. U.S.-based China affairs analyst Wang Hui pointed out that while China is still trying to export indirectly through third countries, Trump's new tariffs are designed to shut that door too. If the CCP uses other countries as a third party to resell Chinese goods into the United States, the U.S. will impose higher tariffs on those countries as well, Wang said. So even China's indirect exports will be hit hard. Adding to the gloom, investment bank UBS recently slashed its forecast for China's 2025 economic growth from 4% to 3.4%. UBS expects China's exports to the U.S. to fall by 2/3 in the coming quarters, and China's overall exports to decline by 10% this year. With U.S. demand cooling and Western buyers becoming a rare sight on the Canton Fair floor, many exhibitors are now asking an uncomfortable question. Has the fair's golden era already ended? And perhaps the organizers' quiet but desperate plea, "Please don't leave early," is the clearest sign yet of just how hard it will be to bring that era back. If you want more sharp, inside coverage like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.